Alright, welcome to the instructional video for putting together the Adventuring Depot. It's a mini setting, so it's a little bit smaller than the full size. It's about a third of that size, and it's on a diamond-shaped base plate. So what we're going to do first with that is cut out our diamond-shaped base. We got our tools: X-Acto knife, metal ruler, and step one here is cutting it out. Now when you're using an X-Acto knife, again, I've said this many times, don't cut yourself. Alright? Also, it's easier to use if you pull the tool towards you instead of trying to push it away from you or etch with it out here. It's easier if you just always pull the knife towards you, slide it along the surface, and just let the blade do its work, which is cutting. It's cutting things. In case you're wondering what kind of employment blades have these days. So that one's cut out. Cut out the other side, and then we'll address a slight issue. Okay, so these two parts are made to overlap to make a single base texture piece. Because of that, if you have any white space along this edge, you want to make sure you trim it. And I've got a little bit of white space, so I'm going to trim that back just a little bit. And I could probably trim up to, I could probably trim a lot up there. It would still look okay, but there we go. White space gone. Now I can glue it together to this. I'm going to address this piece till later when we're working on the graveyard. Anyway, so Adventuring Depot parts here. And what I do is, this one doesn't have a glue spot on the back, but it says pretty clearly, glue other half of Adventuring Depot ground here. This is the other half of the Adventuring Depot ground. And so you follow that simple instruction. Spread out your glue a little bit. And you glue it down so that they match up seamlessly. Okay, so it's a single piece there. All right, we'll let that set. Fold it in half, right down the center. Should have a nice triangle. If you have some other shape besides a triangle, I do not know what you did. Do it right. Triangle. Alright? And you should have plenty of leftover space from cutting out larger hex shapes, that you have space to do a triangle. And there's a lot of different ways you can get your triangle shape onto the board. Really, you should probably have a corner that's just about right, and kind of trace it on there. You know exactly how big it needs to be because you just traced it on there. And you cut it out. So that's one half. You're going to need another triangle, so you find another spot on your board where this triangle will fit. And I think, yep, I think I might just have the space there, but my board has a dent in it there because I dropped it, probably. So this spot over here works great. And now we can just cut that right out. Now foam core you can pick up at Dollar Tree, you can pick up at Walmart, pick up at a couple of places, and it's pretty cheap stuff. Really easy to work with. I really like it. So let's see here. You want to line it up so that if you have a gap at all in your connection, maybe you cut at a slight angle like I do, you want it to have the largest part of the gap on the bottom of this. That way your pop-up terrain comes together in the middle nicely. Alright, let's do that right there. There we go. Alright, you spread your glue on it. You want to spread your glue on the basing material, not on the paper. Use an old credit card or an old gift card or extra piece of foam core, or a piece of cardboard, or your hands. Just spread out the glue. And put that over on your edge of your table so you don't accidentally stick something in it. You line up the place where you're folding here. Okay? You line that up first, then you push everything else down. The fold needs to line up with the fold. The rest of the stuff doesn't line up. You can have the opportunity to trim that later. But the fold is really the important part to line up. And then you you do the other side. Make sure you spread into the edges. Make sure you have enough glue on there. And then you're going to want to make sure in a second that you push down everything firmly so that everything is stuck down nicely. To get this in position, you just line it up and then you flop this over so that you know it's in the right spot because you did it perfectly already. Alright, so at this point you may want to use your hand or something to push any extra glue. Just kind of spread it around a little bit so it doesn't look weird. Put a bunch of glue in there like I happen to do in this one spot. Alright, that lined up nice and straight. And that is your baseboard, and that's, you know, you can go ahead and trim it now. Since this one comes pretty close to the edge, if you want to trim it so that you don't have any extra baseboard hanging out, probably going to want to do that right now instead of waiting, because it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky to put a ruler on there. So trim the edges now if you're concerned about them lining up perfectly. If you're not, then you can leave them, I guess. And as you can see, I've managed to cause a slight tear or something. If that happens to you, just straighten it back out and glue it down. Chances are, paper's paper, it rips. You glue it back down flat, and you know what? It looks fine. And if it has ripped too much, you can glue an extra piece over it. There's even some extra stone pieces that you can just glue on. Cover up anything you might make a mistake on. So let's let that dry while we move on to the next portion. So find all the pieces that have AD on them, and first we want to score them. Now when you're scoring, what you do is you trace the line from one blue marking to the other. Okay? Make sure we're looking at some Adventuring Depot pieces here. Okay, so right here, there is a blue triangle on one side. There's a slightly smaller blue triangle on the other side. What you want to do is place your ruler down. Use a scoring tool. We have a dried out ballpoint pen that we use for ours. Just firmly trace the line from one side to the other. and you're not trying to draw a line, you're just trying to create a slight fold, and if you can feel that with your fingernail, that's good enough. So what I'm going to do now is score all of those lines, and then it's going to be on to cutting. Alright, so in some places it will say score to the cut, or bend here to the cut. That just means that you score until you can see where the cut comes in. So there's a couple of places on these where that happens. You don't bend the whole thing, you just bend to the cut. You score it to the cut and you'll bend it in half. So there, and then these spots here on the edge bend to the cut. So you bend, score that to that, that to that. You don't score all the way through, just on the edge there. And if you score all the way through, it'll still work. It'll probably look fine, but it won't work quite as well. Okay. So for this piece, actually, we have a little extra instructions. As you can see, this piece equals this piece. Okay. You can see that they are the same. They look the same outline in the instructions, same piece here. You can see that's where you bend. This is where you score on the dotted lines, cut on the straight lines. So you can see dotted line there. We're going to want to score right there. And this piece is a little more complicated than most, just because it has some more internal sort of cuts and folds that you need to make. That's okay. You can handle this because you're brilliant. Okay, so look, match up. So you can see there's lines on the art, so you know that's where there's a fold. That's where I should score because there's dotted lines there. If you want, you can even cut out the instruction piece and try bending it and see if it does what it needs to do before you do it. Although make sure you've already put together the fort and the ruins so that you don't ruin their instructions. Alright, on to more scoring. So anything with an AD label, you want to score that, and then you're going to want to cut it out in a second. First score, then cut. It's easier to score if you score before you cut. It's so much easier. So do it. But if you've already cut it, I mean, you can look at your PDFs, you can see where the lines are to score. You can go back and score later. It's not going to kill your project to do it out of order. There's the way back. Alright, so I think that's all the Adventuring Depot parts that need to be scored. If not, I will have to score them after I cut, when I realize I've made a horrible error. Okay, so with cutting, again, use your X-Acto knife, pull towards you, cut out all the pieces labeled AD. They should all be in this general area, and this little one right up here, also labeled AD, so don't forget this little one up here. You're going to need that, and you're going to need some string, which I will find when needed. Oh, there it is. You're going to need some string, okay? And you can pick, I mean, basically any kind of thick kite string-esque string will work great for this project. You can even use sewing thread if you want to wind a couple of pieces together or something, or you could use yarn, just any string that isn't too stretchy will work fine. You could even use sewing string and not wind it together so that it's almost invisible, and that might look good. I like to be able to see the string, though. I kind of like everything to be visible, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut. Alright, so you definitely want to cut out the internal slot pieces, okay? There's one of those in this. It's this piece right here, and it has an internal slot right there, okay? Make sure you cut that out. Okay, so we've got some extra bits here. We'll use them later if we need to, if we make any mistakes, or if we just feel like gluing on some extra bits. Or you can use them to kind of give to your players, your game, and say, hey, you got a backpack. Here's a backpack. So in the instructions for this portion, glue the space labeled AD1 to the corresponding space on the Adventuring Depot ground. So let's see, AD1. AD1, that's right here. So gluing in these pillars, one of them's AD1, the other one is AD2. Gluing those down now will make it so that we don't have to try to glue them in after everything's already set up. So let's glue those down first. And line them up with the ground texture. It should line up perfectly. Line up your ground texture on these unless I tell you otherwise. And there are times where you may not want to for various reasons, but at this point you definitely want to line up the ground textures. Alright, bend those over this way. Those will be glued in soon. Alright, and then, so we've done that for AD1 and AD2. Use the template to score and cut the image. Blah, blah. Glue AD3 and AD5. So, AD3 through AD5. So 3, 4, and 5. Okay? So what we're doing is we're going to bend this bad boy like that, okay? And then we're going to bend the back, the middle. So it makes kind of an M-shaped. And if you leave it like this, it looks a little bit like an armadillo. We're not going to do that. We're going to glue it down. So let's go ahead and do that. AD3, 4, and 5. And you probably want to glue them all down at once. Make sure your ground textures line up when you glue. Smear your glue a little bit before you put it down. Helps it dry, helps it stick better. Less glue sometimes really is more sticky, contrary to what you might believe. Make sure your ground textures line up. And also, if you want, I mean, you can lay this whole thing flat. Just like that. Lay it flat when you glue down your ends, because that's going to need to line up anyway. And then you want to fold the whole thing over this way once you get everything glued on, so that you can make sure everything bends right there. Look at your pieces, make sure they're still lined up. If they are, like mine, then you're doing great. Okay. Next, glue AD14 and AD15. Those are the two pieces that we have here on the roof. Okay? The pillars that we glued down can now be glued to the roof. The AD14 and AD15. Okay? AD14 and AD15. Alright. And those should should line up. The textures on these don't line up. Just glue them to the spot. I think they might be. Anyway, just glue them in so that they line up with the edge, and then that should work just great. Okay, next part. Glue AD11, AD9, AD6, and AD13. So AD11 is, ooh, okay. AD11 is this piece right here, and that's going to go on the inside of this. All right. So first, let's fold up our piece so that it's going to make a little little bench. Some swords on it. So first we glue AD11 to there, and the texture won't line up perfectly, but glue it onto the spot, and you're going to want to make a few adjustments when you glue down AD6 and AD9. Okay? So you glue that down, and then you're going to fold everything to make sure it works. So let's glue down AD6 and AD9. At the same time, it's kind of tricky. Get AD9 in place, then loop around inside, and you'll be able to see if AD6 is still in place. It doesn't seem to be. So get that lined up with the ground textures in there. Hold that down with your fingers while you go line up this with the ground textures out here. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And now you just fold the whole thing over to see if it still works. So let's fold it up and see if it works. I get a little resistance, and it looks like everything is staying in place. Push things down a little bit if they need to be pushed down, so they're all flat. Okay? We're ready to move on to the next step, which is glue AD13, which is this top piece. We're going to glue that on. So first let's bend this piece like so. Okay? Glue down AD13 right there, and this one will line up with the textures. So line up those textures so that it looks great, and line up the slot right on the edge. Okay? Next, glue a slot and glue AD23, and then glue AD12. AD12 and 23. Well, AD23 is this big sword handle. Okay? Kind of an advertisement for the Adventuring Depot, just to say, if you wanted to buy a giant sword, here's where. And before that's dry, try bending everything over. Make sure that the sword is aligned so that it doesn't come out of the thing, of the book, once it's folded. Okay, you want everything to fit inside. So that's that. The sword looks good. And now we slot and glue AD12. Okay, so we need to slot this piece through this piece. Okay, so it's slotted through. See that? And then we glue this piece on to AD12. So put some glue on AD12, and make sure the textures line up here on the sides, and hold for 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then we're going to glue AD8. Well, AD7 first, which is this internal part of the anvil section. And this part's a little tricky, you know. So AD7 goes down first, which is the inside. And in the meantime, if you're like me, you've just pulled off the other thing you glued. And that's fine. It's already kind of established its own connection there, and it will go back on easily enough. And then you glue down the other part of the inside part. don't know if you can see exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm gluing down this piece in here, okay? And I'm making sure that things line up on the ground. And then I'm gluing down this part out here. And again, making sure that everything lines up when it's glued down, okay? So, and that should line up right with the edge there. And then what I'm going to do is fold the whole thing flat again, okay? Folding things flat with this really helps to know if things are going to work. So you fold it flat again, and you should have this nice little tiered sort of giant anvil with a sword coming out of it to show this is the Adventuring Depot. Alright, so the next part is glue AD 20, then glue AD, oh, so no, that's not right. We need to glue, yeah, okay, AD 16 and 19. So 16's here, 19 is on the inside of this wall, inside of this post, so 16 and then 19 and then 20 can all be glued at once. So you're gluing here, here, and then to the inside of the post. Okay? So here to here and to the inside of the post. And what that does is creates a nice stable countertop that if you wanted to, you could have a character stand on that, give a speech or something maybe. And then we're going to do a lot of the same thing over here for the start, and then we're going to glue down the other edge. So we're going to glue down 17, 18, and 21. And 10. So what you do is slot this piece in, 17. Make sure your ground textures line up on the ground. Make sure your pole texture lines up on the pole. And you have done it. Alright, so we'll let that set for a little bit while we talk about the next part. This sword, okay? This is AD 22. Alright? Goes right on the side here, covers up the slot, and there you go. It's a sword. And what you want to do is fold first. If it's coming out a little bit, just push it down, push it in so it doesn't come out, so it comes right to the edges. That way it won't get damaged in transit or something. Alright? Okay. The last part, as you can see, our entire structure is leaning significantly. That's because the whole thing can fold flat. The whole thing, alright? At any time. So what we need to do is create a mechanism that pulls it up straight. Okay? We don't want it to fold flat all the time. We want it to be open. Okay? So how do we do that? I'll tell you how. With string. Okay? We cut 5 inches of string or so. Don't need a very long piece of string. Let's see if it's exactly 5 inches. Nope. Alright, exactly 5 inches of string. Alright, we wrap one end around this piece here. That's the thing for AD 25 on it. Okay? We wrap it around there once, twice, fold it over, okay, okay, so we fold the tab in half and we glue it together. So we have that little piece that was double, we fold it in half, we got the string inside, so we got a nice tight bond on the string. Okay? Then we'll look in here and look right in the edge of here. You can see, let's zoom in a little bit. Is that even registering on the camera? No. Anyway, right in there, in that little spot is the AD25. That's where you glue this piece. Okay? Take my word for it. Right in there. That spot. Right in there. Okay? So what you're going to do is take AD25 and glue it on in there. Just glue it in there so the string is coming right out of this corner. Okay? Alright, the next step is the rock AD24. And what you're going to want to do is measure about the length of string that you're going to want so that it goes right under this rock. Okay? But you want to make sure that this is standing up straight when you do, okay? Because what you want to do is this string is going to pull it, is going to keep it from going that way. So you're going to wrap your string around the rock, line up the rock on the ground, pull the string till it's tight, so it's pulling the building up straight, and you can have it pulling a little bit further this way towards the rock. You're going to glue that on the bottom of the rock, wrap the rest of your string around it so that the end of the string is underneath and covered in glue. And then you're going to put glue on the ground and making sure not to adjust your string pullage too much. You're going to make sure that end is tucked under there though. If the end keeps coming up, just tuck it under with some X-Acto knife blade. Just tuck it under there so that it's in the glue. And then glue the whole thing down. Hold it there for, I don't know, count to 20 or something. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyway, I wouldn't advise popping it up until that's a little bit drier. But essentially, you're done. You've made the pop-up Adventuring Depot, and it's ready to have some minis come in. You know, maybe Bard and like a dwarf miner, right? Oh, hi there. I'd like to buy some stuff. I want to buy a new knife. Do they have knives here? I don't know. The shop owner is not here, sir. We better check out something else. Anyway, let's try it. Folds flat. That's essential. And pops back up, and you can see it starting to lean this way, and the string catches it, pulls it up straight. That is working perfectly. And with any setting, if it doesn't fold flat, if it doesn't open flat, just give it a little flex. It'll open and lay perfectly flat. So thanks for watching the video, and hope you enjoyed, and hope you enjoy building your terrain. Thanks a lot, guys.